In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to translate tastes like, smells like, sounds like, and looks like. If you've been following my channel, you may think, hey, this sounds very familiar. And that's because it kind of is. About 3 weeks ago, I did a similar video, but I had a bunch of follow-up questions from viewers on the main channel and from members of my paid group, the Qroo Spanish Crew. And if you don't know what that is, that's a group where I have exclusive courses and, well, it's just pretty cool. If you want to take your Spanish to the next level, check it out, all right? I don't want to go down into a commercial here. Anyway, because of those follow-up questions, I said, you know what, let's just refilm this thing. I mean, these videos sit on YouTube for years, so let's just get it right, all right? We're going to kick this thing off with taste like. And this is a verb that should look very familiar, but some people don't know that it means to taste as well, and it is saber, to know, and it means to taste. Well, in the last video, I jumped right to taste like, and I didn't really talk about just using the verb for to taste very much, and it was confusing some folks, so I said, you know what, here we are. So let's talk about that. Saber can mean to taste, and that's not you tasting something, that's the flavor of something, how it tastes, you know, to you. So if you want to say that something tastes good, it would be sabe bien. And if it tastes bad, sabe mal. That was a question I had last time because I didn't get into it. El pescado sabe mal. You know, the fish tastes bad. La bebida no sabe bien. The drink doesn't taste good. That's how you would use it. Now in Latin America, a lot of times they like to use feo when something doesn't taste good. Literally saying it tastes ugly. You can do that. El pescado sabe feo. The fish tastes bad. That usage, as I understand it, is not used in Spain. So if you're studying European Spanish, don't use that one. Another thing that came up when we talked about taste is folks were like, okay, is that the only way to say something tastes good? So if I'm saying the food tastes good, no, I have other videos about that. But there's another verb that I would say probably use more commonly. If you're just going to say, hey, this tastes good, estar, estar. You could say, la comida está buena, or la comida está rica. You know, the food is good, the food is delicious, all right? So, estar. All right, now let's get back to the actual topic of this one, taste like. So we have taste, and we're going to add a preposition to it for the like part, and we're going to get saber a. So what we're literally saying in Spanish is that the food tastes to something. La sopa sabe a pescado. The soup tastes like fish. Las galletas saben a limón. The cookies taste like lemon. Make sure that you change that verb to agree with whatever the subject is. The water tastes like chlorine. I always hate that, don't you? El agua sabe a cloro. See, it's not too hard to use. Tastes to something. And if you want to fall back on the classic, it tastes like chicken, what would you get? Sabe a pollo, sabe a pollo. Unless it's something plural, then it'd be saben a pollo. Let's put it in a sentence. What would taste like chicken? You know, I was recently in Italy and having rabbit quite a bit over there. People ask me what rabbit tastes like, so that's a good one. If you're going to ask somebody, what does it taste like? ¿A qué sabe el conejo? What does rabbit taste like? Sabe a pollo. Tastes like chicken. Now, one other thing that came up in the last video is people are like, okay, saber means to taste. So if I want to say, hey, taste this, am I using saber? No. You're using probar. Probar, which means to try. You're literally saying, try this, or do you want to try this? ¿Quieres probar mi café? Do you want to try my coffee? No. ¿Por qué no? Why not? Porque acabas de decirme que sabe a pescado. Because you just told me it tastes like fish. That's another useful construction. Acabar de plus infinitive, to have just done something. See, we get all kinds of other things out of these videos, don't we? I think so. All right, let's move on to smells like. We're going to expand on this one a little bit more from some questions as well. And our verb here is going to be oler, to smell. And that verb, I didn't describe a lot last time. It can mean your perception, like you smell something, and it can also be that something smells, like it's giving off an odor. You could use it either way. And if we're going to say it smells like something, we're going to say it smells to something. Oler a. Prepositions are very important. So without the a, if I just want to say something smells good, smells bad, we're going to follow the same pattern we did with saber. Huele bien, huele mal. In Latin America, huele feo. Now with those examples, some folks who are not familiar with oler might have been like, okay, that doesn't look like that. We're saying huele and things. You're right. So let's go ahead and look at the conjugations on this one in the present tense. It is very irregular. There they are on the screen. You can play with this a little bit later. That's what we're going to be working with. Most of the time, definitely using this in the present tense. So let's plug some of these in. Where we have oler a, obviously we're conjugating. The food smells like fish. La comida huele a pescado. His shirt smells like smoke. Su camisa huele a humo. But literally, his shirt smells to smoke. Keep that in your head, literal translation. These shoes smell like feet. They should, right? They're shoes. Estos zapatos huelen a pies. Think you got that, right? We don't need to spend too much more time on that one. Next one we have is sounds like. And you might have noticed a pattern here, you know, that things taste too, things smell too. So you're thinking, okay, our verb is probably sonar, right? Sounds. And we're going to put a. Yeah, sometimes. This one's going to be a little bit of a curveball here. We're going to have two options. Our verb is sonar, and we're going to have sonar a and sonar como for to sound like. But they are not interchangeable. Sonar a is more like to seem. In fact, sometimes in those sentences you could actually substitute sonar a with parecer, to seem. And we're going to be using this a lot with more like abstract ideas. It sounds like a lie. Suena a una mentira, or just suena a mentira. See, because a lie doesn't really have a sound, right? It's not a literal thing. When we're dealing with things like that, then think, okay, sonar a. Now I could have popped in parecer. Parece una mentira, or parece mentira. If you can do that, then sonar a is the one you want to go with. Now, a lot of times this is going to appear with an indirect object pronoun in front of the conjugated verb to say it sounds like a lie to me, right? You can add that. Me suena, it sounds to me, a una mentira, like a lie, or a mentira. That una sometimes appears, sometimes it doesn't. This sounds like a good idea. Esto suena a buena idea. This sounds like a good idea to me. Esto me suena a buena idea. Think you got that one? Now with sonar como, we're saying this sounds like something else. This is more literal. It's, you know, it's a real comparison in sound. These fireworks sound like gunshots. Estos fuegos artificiales suenan como disparos. Your ringtone sounds like a barking dog. Tu tono de llamada suena como un perro ladrando. Got that one? We're doing our literal comparisons. We're going to be using sonar como. When we're getting more like figurative, more like parecer, sonar a. Now I could jump right to the next section and kind of leave this, but I'm going to give you one more. It's a construction, a formula, right? I love to break down the Spanish language into formulas because they're easier to teach to adults, and then you can use, you know, your logical English-speaking brain to create sentences you may never have seen or heard before in your life, but they will be grammatically correct. So this is our formula. Suena como si plus the imperfect subjunctive. It's a formula. If you don't know what the subjunctive is, there's a really long definition. I find very confusing. Every time I hear it, I'm like, how is that teaching anybody anything? It exists in English, but it's not super important. It is super important in Spanish. So the way I explain it generally is, it is a different set of conjugations that are triggered by certain grammatical constructions. When you see this, what follows it has to be in that conjugation. And it can be difficult to learn unless you break it down to little formulas like this and you understand what these triggers are. That's what we call them, subjunctive triggers. I have a whole playlist on it. You should go binge watch it. I have a ton of material on it as well over in my paid learning group, the Qroo Spanish Crew. And if you want to take your Spanish to the next level, I'm telling you, come over and check out the crew. You're going to be impressed. The reviews have been fantastic. I'm really excited about being in there and interacting with people every day and helping them reach that next level. So I want to check that out. There'll be a link to it in the description section. Anyway, back to this. Suena como si plus the imperfect subjunctive. That is the imperfect subjunctive in the past tense. And we're going to be using this for more like abstract ideas. It sounds as if. That is the most literal translation in English. So this is a good one. It sounds as if you already knew the truth when you made the decision. suena como si ya supiera la verdad cuando tomaste la decisión. See, we can make some fancy ones with that. Take a look at that sentence. We have our suena como si. That's our formula, right? The ya, all that means is already. The verb following that, supieras, comes from the verb saber, to know or to taste. You know, it can be to taste now, right? Here it's being used for to know. And it's conjugated in the imperfect subjunctive. And how do we know to conjugate it in the imperfect subjunctive? Because we learned this little formula, this pattern. And it's that fast. You can learn patterns sometimes in less than a minute. And then it's just practicing applying them, you know. It's going to really speed up your Spanish. Now with that one, I could drop an indirect object pronoun right in front of there, and I could say something like, you know, it sounds to me as if, me suena como si ya supieras la verdad cuando tomaste la decisión. All right, let's go ahead and move on to looks like. We say looks like something a lot in different contexts in English. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So I'm going to cover a few constructions here. I'm going to start with one where I'm saying this looks like this. You know, we're comparing the physical appearance of two things, and we're going to be using the pronominal form of the verb parecer. So the pronominal form has the se added to it in the infinitive. I know that's a lot of grammatical terms, folks. Don't let that freak you out. I use them so often, after a while you're like, oh, I got it now, Paul. So we're going to have parecerse. And as I mentioned before, the preposition you choose is super, super important. It is here as well. And it's going to have an a. You have to have the a. Parecerse a. Ese chico se parece a tu primo. That guy looks like your cousin. We have to have that a there. Now some people will be like, okay, well clearly we do, Paul, because that's a personal a, because the object is the cousin. Although we do have a's before that, that's not what this one is. So even if I have an object, I'm not using a person, it's still going to be there. Your house looks like the one we had in Mexico. That a is still going to be there. We're not talking about a person. Tu casa se parece a, there it is, la que teníamos en Mexico. Now, you can also use this as like reciprocal. If I want to say, for example, my brother and I look alike. We resemble each other. Mi hermano y yo nos parecemos. We resemble each other. The men look alike. They resemble each other. Los hombres se parecen. Now let's move on to just parecer, plain old parecer, to seem. And a lot of times we're going to use this for like, looks like, but more for like general impressions. She looks like an actress. Ella parece una actriz. See how that one's going to kind of work? And a lot of times you're going to use like parece que for it seems like something, it looks like, parece que va a llover. It looks like it's going to rain. It seems like it's going to rain. See, in English a lot of times we'll add looks like, seems like. If you could, you know, swap those in English, then you think, okay, parecer, probably a pretty good choice here. Now we'll move on to another one that's very common in Latin America, and that is verse, right? We have, that's pronominal form of ver, to see. And verse has a lot of different meanings. It could be like to look, like how you look, appear, to come across as. So let's say, you know, I'm shopping for new clothes. I'm going to come out of the dressing room. My wife looks at me and I'm like, ¿Cómo me veo? ¿Cómo me veo? Like, hey, how do I look? And she may be like, te ves muy bien. You look very good, you know? Or maybe she's like, te ves cansado. You look tired. Not that that was a question at the time, but maybe we're segueing into something. So you could have like verse plus adjective like that. Te ves cansado. You look tired. And it doesn't just have to be people. I could say, the house looks pretty. La casa se ve bonita. La casa se ve bonita. Now, verse is used in some other contexts. I'd say a really common one is like encontrarse, like to find oneself in certain situations. For example, verse en problemas is when somebody's in trouble, right? They've gotten themselves into a mess. Mi primo siempre se ve en problemas. You know, my cousin is always in trouble, always having problems. So that's a pretty useful one. If you enjoyed the video, just do me a favor and give it a thumbs up. And until next time, hasta luego.